We're going to talk about communication and difficult conversations. We have some basics around communication that we've already talked about in this course, but just to revisit them, we want to make sure that our communication is as personalized as possible, meaning that we're not sending out mass communication and updates when working with families. We're thinking about individual family needs, individual children. What can we share that's meaningful for them? We also want to prioritize face to face or over the phone conversations. Again, it just helps with the meaning and understanding of things. When we're sending out text messages or emails or even written notes, we're not really sure of the delivery. Are they getting to where they need to be? And if they are getting to where they need to be, how are they being received? Another thing we want to make sure we always do, especially if we're in the teaching field, is include positive feedback. A lot of times teachers do not reach out to families unless there is something concerning or negative to share. And this would lead to a cycle of not really wanting to communicate with the teacher versus showing up, showing them there are positive things that are happening really helps build a relationship and opens up that communication for future issues if there are difficult conversations to be had. We also want to make sure we're taking consideration into sensitivity and confidentiality. A lot of times when we're communicating with families, it might be a topic that they find very sensitive, even if we don't. And it might be an issue around confidentiality. That's something that we want to keep private for them. And so really kind of adjusting how we communicate to make sure those things are protected for them, because that really builds the trust within the relationship. Whether that means we have a private phone conversation with nobody else in the room, or it means that we're setting it up to make sure nobody else is around and we're going to a separate room completely. All of those things we need to make sure we're mindful of because we're building positive relationships, and those relationships are built on open communication and trust. All right, moving forward, we can communicate lots of different things, and it's good to know what types of information we're actually communicating. There are 3 different types of information that we typically pass on to families. Those that require a response, such as a field trip permission form or something that needs to be signed. Things that are informational just for the family's benefit to know things, and things that require some kind of action item, whether that be if you were a teacher providing homework or a resource to families that you needed them to reach out to. There are different things that we are trying to convey, and therefore there are different communication styles we might want to utilize. These are all examples of different kind of communication modalities, that we could utilize in order to communicate. And you could see how if we were requiring a response, maybe a newsletter is not the best fit. Whereas if we're providing information, we might use a newsletter because it doesn't need to be so personalized all the time. Whereas if we need an action item where we want them to engage in something and follow up, we might start with a newsletter and then follow up with a phone call. So communication can have multiple modalities at once, right? We're not just going to stick to one. We're going to look at what we're trying to send out and match it with the intent. All right, moving forward, let's talk about how we actually manage difficult conversations. There are a lot of steps to even preparing to have a difficult conversation. You don't just walk right in and hope for the best. The first thing you're going to start doing is reflection. You want to know how you feel about the topic. What are your thoughts on the topic? You need to have a reflection on what is your current relationship with the family. That's going to dictate how you approach the conversation as well. Also, what you know about the family. Maybe you need to gather additional information for the conversation to be successful. Your feelings about the family. So what you know about the family and how you feel about the family can be 2 different things. You can know a great deal about a family and maybe not really have a positive feeling for them. Maybe there's been negative interaction in the past. Maybe you have some implicit bias. So that's an important element to be mindful of because it's going to be something you need to be aware of as you approach the conversation. You're going to want to reflect on the ideas you have for working with the family. Does it mean that you need to meet with them more, have more phone conversations, what the conversation might actually look like? And also reflect on how you're going to manage your time within the meeting and how you're going to follow up from the meeting. This is important because we never want to leave families in the middle of a conversation. We want to be very clear about our expectations. And you're working with other professionals, so a lot of conversations can't go on all day long. So being clear with them that, oh, this meeting, we only have an hour for it, or I have an hour and a half. I hope we can get through it. If we don't get through it in enough time, let's make sure we set aside additional time to talk. They have an idea of what the expectation is and also how you intend to ensure that the pieces that you've set in place in the meeting are going to be followed up on. And that's really that follow-up piece. Okay, we're still preparing. Step 2 is then we're going to take all of that reflection and we're going to start thinking about questions that we're going to bring to the meeting. What information do we need to have to be successful? What outcomes do we want? Who's going to be leading the meeting? This is an important part because we don't want to feel like it's a detached meeting. If there's somebody that other than yourself that might be more beneficial to hear for the family to hear from, that person should lead the meeting. We're trying to set families up for success. So if they feel more comfortable with somebody else, or if someone is more knowledgeable, that person is going to be the person that leads. Most often, if somebody is more knowledgeable, but the family feels more comfortable, you're going to have the person that feels more comfortable with the family lead, and then have the other person kind of contribute. You also want to make sure you prepare questions on additional resources. Are the families going to need other things coming out of this meeting? Step 3 is to prepare questions from the family's perspective. So now you've thought about what you need going to the meeting. Now we're going to think about how the family is coming to the meeting. How might the family feel coming to this meeting? What culture do they have? Are there going to be possible misunderstandings about the information you're giving them? If there are possible misunderstandings, this is a time to reflect on it so you know how to present the information as clearly as possible. What are the family's hopes? What are they hoping to get out of this interaction? All of this is going to set you up to really have a very easier conversation, because you're going to understand where they're coming from and also what you're trying to attain out of the conversation. All right, moving forward, after still preparing, the last step for preparing is, now that you're prepared, you're preparing the family. We never want to make families feel like they are not in the know or that they're not a large part of the process. Families are going to be more emotionally regulated and prepared to participate when we prepare them. So provide them with a clear and specific purpose of why you're meeting. Have additional personnel or persons there that make them feel comfortable if needed. Interpreter is another one. We want to make sure they understand everything we're sharing, right? And also being mindful of, even if the subject is not sensitive to you or sensitive to your culture, it might be sensitive to them. Going back to that perspective piece, so preparing them for that. A great example might be that some cultures really struggle with children with special needs. Why that might not be true for your culture, it could be for theirs. So having that perspective and preparing them for that conversation. We're going to be talking about, your child today, and we want to go over some reports around possible concerns with disabilities, and really understanding that that might be something very sensitive for them. All right, after we prepared, we're going to prepare the environment. We're going to make sure there's privacy, it's comfortable, we can have a conversation, and also that it's safe. Some difficult conversations with parents with heightened emotions and families with heightened emotions need to kind of have a mindset of, can I leave the room? Is there access for me to leave quickly if something happens? Remember, families are dealing with a lot, so there might be times where we need to consider our own safety as well. All right. Okay, last step for preparing. We've now reflected, we've thought about our questions, we prepared the family, we prepared the space. Now we have to practice it all, because again, we're not going to go in and just hope for the best. And that means we're going to practice role playing with another professional. We are going to do this role playing in a way to understand that if we make a mistake while we're role playing, that's okay. It's part of the learning process. Throughout the role playing, it's important to pause and reflect on how it's going. So, I just said that, pause. How do you think the family will receive that? What is something else I might say that would be better? And that way you can kind of fine tune your ideas so you feel more collected when you do eat with the family, and you have a better understanding of how they will perceive things. All right, we've prepared. Now we're ready to engage in the conversation. When we're engaging in a difficult conversation, we need to keep these things in mind. We need to self-regulate, right? Remaining calm. Take a deep breath, be aware of your emotions, and try and remain calm. We're also going to keep it remaining family-centered. Sometimes when you go into a difficult conversation with a family, again, there are a lot of heightened emotions, and things can start be directed towards different people that maybe doesn't belong there. So we're going to redirect it towards the family. We're going to make sure we're giving the family what they need. It's not about us in this process. We're going to acknowledge difficulty and emotions, and this is true for ourselves and for them. So acknowledging that difficult conversations, because we care a lot when we work with families, are difficult to have and can be very taxing on us emotionally. So respecting their emotions and letting them have them, acknowledging them, and also, giving them some empathy, but then recognizing your own feelings as well. That was really hard for me. I might need to take a break. Okay. After you engage, you make sure you take care of yourself. That really breaks down into giving yourself time, reset, and seeking support. If something happened in a meeting or something was said, seek out somebody who can be your sounding board and help you reflect through that process and kind of see maybe what to do next. You shouldn't have to do the work all by yourself. Working with families is taxing, it's emotionally trying, but it's also very rewarding. So take care of yourself when you do it. All right. With that, that is our final lecture. It's wrapped up. I will see you in the watching work.